Fatiha. السلام عليكم. والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد سيدنا مدد يا رسول مدد يا سادات أصحاب مدد يا مشايخنا دستور ولا شاء الله فاز أحسن شو محمد حقاني طريقتنا الصحبة والخير في الجمعية بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فمن رضا يهديها يشرح صدره في الإسلام ومن ضله يجعل صدره ضيقا حرجا كأنما صعد في السماء Allah صدق الله العظيم. Allah Azze ve Celle insana hidayet vermek isterse, iradesi oysa
It is Him, Allah Almighty, who by His will provides guidance.
Kalbini İslam'a açar.
And if He, Allah Almighty, desires to provide guidance and make somebody rightly guided, then Allah Almighty will open and widen that person's hearts whom He desires to be rightly guided.
Kalbi İslam'ı duyunca açılır.
Allah Almighty will widen and open that person's hearts whom He Almighty desires to be rightly guided, and He will widen and open it so that it will embrace and contain Islam.
Sevinir.
That person will then rejoice and be happy to accept Islam in his heart, and that person will then feel the refreshment of having embraced Islam within his heart. However, if Allah Almighty does not desire someone to be rightly guided, if Allah Almighty does not desire someone to be rightly guided, then that person's heart will close down and will become narrow. And that person's heart will become narrow and more narrow to the extent that person will not accept and will not be able to contain Islam in his heart.
İnsanlar dalalette olur.
And it is those people who then will be in error.
Bu Allah Azze ve Celle'nin hikmetidir.
This is Allah Almighty's wisdom. This happens by Allah Almighty's wisdom.
Onun hikmetine akıl ermez.
And human mind may not grasp the wisdom of Allah Almighty.
İstediğini yapar, istediğini yapmaz.
It is Him, Allah Almighty, who may do as He likes and who may not do as He likes.
İstersen itiraz et, ister şey yapma.
It doesn't matter whether you object or whether you criticize what Allah Almighty desires.
Onun hükmü saridir, yürürlüktedir.
It is His rulership and is His desire and His will that is in power, in effect, and is valid.
Hüküm O'nundur.
Rulership and the will of what is going to happen belongs to Him, Allah Almighty.
Ona karışılmaz.
No one may object or interfere with His divine decision.
Onun için bazen bazı insanlar görür ya bunlar ne için bu kadar şeydirler, aksi bir insanlar, sana düşmandır.
You hear people object and criticize others and wonder about the states of others, why others maybe act like enemies or may be in the opposite side.
Allah'a düşmandır. Onların kalpleri kapanmış.
But their hearts have been closed down.
Kalpleri İslam'a karşı Allah kapatmış.
Our hearts are sealed off and are closed down. And we must know they are closed down by Allah Almighty.
Demek. Onların kalpleri sıkıntıdadır.
And their hearts are in a state of distress.
Hiçbir zaman ferah olmazlar.
They will never rejoice and never feel refreshment within their hearts.
Ferah olan, kalbi açık olan mümindir.
The heart of a believer, of a mu'min, is a heart which is wide and open and feels refreshed.
Müminin kalbi ferahlıdır.
The heart of a believer is a state of joy and happiness.
Kafir, Allah'a düşman olan insan daima sıkıntıdadır.
The heart of the deniers, of those who oppose Allah Almighty, are in a constant state of distress,
Üzüntüdedir.
in a state of sadness.
Allah'ın sevdiği insan iman eden insandır.
Those whom Allah Almighty loves are those who believe in Allah Almighty.
Ona hayır murad etmiştir Allah Azze ve Celle.
And those who believe in Allah Almighty are those who have been favored by the divine will of Allah Almighty and who have been blessed by having received this goodness by Allah Almighty.
Onun iradesinin karşısında da bir şey kimse duramaz.
It is by the will of Allah Almighty that they are believers, and no one can stand against or withstand the will of Allah Almighty.
İstediğin kadar sen müminin sana eziyet et, ne kadar şey yapsan etsen,
No matter how much you may tyrannize or oppress a believer,
mümin vazgeçmez.
a believer, a mu'min, will never give in and never give up his faith.
Çünkü Allah sevmiş onu,
Because they have been loved and they are dear to Allah Almighty.
ona o nimeti vermiş.
And this faith is a gift and divine favor by Allah Almighty.
Hidayet nimetini
It is the gift and divine favor of guidance.
vermiş. En büyük nimettir.
And this is the greatest favor of all, the favor of guidance.
Dünyanın nimetleri Allah Azze ve Celle'nin yolunda olmadıktan sonra hiçbir işe yaramaz.
The favors of this world have no meaning if you are not following the way of Allah Almighty.
Faydası olmaz. O
There will be no benefit in them.
yolda olanlar her yaptıkları hayırdır.
Those who follow the way of Allah Almighty will receive the blessing and the goodness in everything they do.
Berekettir. Onlara da
There will be barakah and spiritual abundance in everything they do.
ecir, sevaptır.
There will be rewards and blessings in their actions.
Allah onlardan eylesin bizi inşallah.
And may Allah Almighty make us become those who are in a state of constant gain and constant profit in all they do as they follow the way of Allah Almighty.
Bu güzel yolu bize murat etmiş olsun inşallah.
And may we become those who are blessed by the favor of guidance by Allah Almighty, and who are those believers who have become believers by the will of Allah Almighty.
Amin. Allah tevfik. El Fatiha.